Alright guys, so today I'm going to explain how to balance Anki and Immersion. So the right combination of Anki, right, conscious study of vocab, and Immersion, which is basically input, reading or listening, is one of the most effective ways to learn a language, right? And I'm going to explain my journey when it comes to this stuff. So, when it comes to French, right? Even though I didn't use a lot of Anki, I was still able to sort of acquire French, right? Because I was consuming easy content that was very conversational. So like the high frequency words ended up repeating a lot. So it kind of I didn't necessarily need to use Anki, but I would have definitely gotten faster results with Anki. And actually right now, when it comes to my French, I want to achieve I want to master spoken French, which is I'm learning very rare vocabulary that still is relevant. So it's basically rare vocabulary native speakers know, but they're words that are not commonly used anyway. So like for me, it's like I need to learn those words. And I noticed that when I used Anki for French, at least, I dramatically increased my comprehension and like I was able to improve in French way faster. And same with Japanese. The moments when I would use the Anki consistently, right, and consistently made like over 10 cards, those periods were when I did that. That's when I improved my Japanese the most. You know? Because here's the thing with Japanese, right? Like, I have roughly like almost 5,000 cards in Anki. And that's like pure, that's like there's some French in there, but it's like mostly like Japanese cards, right? And that's over the course of, 2.5 years of intense, immersion, right? And the thing is that, you know, towards the end of those 2.5 years, so like I think like after like a year after that, basically I used a lot of Anki in the middle parts of my journey. So like in the beginning of my Japanese, I didn't use a lot of Anki because I was illiterate. Like I was 6 months in learning Japanese and I couldn't even read hiragana. Like I couldn't even read the basic alphabet because I was only learning through listening, right? So that was that, right? So I started to become literate, right, and learn the reading. And that's when I started to use a lot of Anki because I needed to learn like the readings and I needed to basically catch my reading ability with my listening because I was like understanding all this anime, but when I would turn on the Japanese subtitles, like it would just be like a bunch of blob to me. Like it just wouldn't make like the subtitles are just like for most people reading is easier, but at the time, right, listening was easier than reading because I couldn't read, right? So I had to basically catch up my reading ability with my listening. And I used a lot of Anki for that, and I was able to dramatically improve in that. And I continued to use Anki during that period after I became fluent. I mean, after I learned how to read, that's when I started to use Anki a lot more. And during this time, guys, I learned like the most Japanese ever. You know, my Japanese ability significantly improved with Anki. And a lot of people like to point out that immersion is everything, and it is true. Like immersion is everything, but I just realized that if I just been more consistent with Anki, like I would have gotten way better results. Because here's the thing, when you know a lot of words through Anki, right, you grab more from your immersion. So even though immersion is where all the magic happens, when you combine grammar, I mean, when you combine Anki with immersion, you're able to take more out from your immersion because you'll be able to notice words they put into Anki. So if you memorize if you memorize like all these words in Anki, you would be able to notice it when you actually immerse, right? Had you not Anki'd this word, you would not have noticed this word in your immersion. So that's like proof that and then when you notice the word, right, in your immersion, there's more opportunities for you to acquire it because you recognize the word, right? Instead of you trying to only rely on immersion to learn words, when you combine it with Anki, it accelerates the process so like a lot, And there are periods where I made like 30 cards a day, but like it would only be like for two weeks. Like it'd only be like 2 weeks of like 30 cards a day or like 3 weeks, right? But during those 3 weeks, like when I made 30 cards a day, like I made crazy improvement, guys. I'm just telling you guys, you know what I mean? I'm not telling you guys to do 30 cards a day. Like obviously, the golden rule is like stick to 10 cards a day. Because if you stick to 10 cards a day consistently for 2 years, you will have a vocabulary higher than most natives. Okay, so I'm just gonna say that. So just keep doing that. But what I would do is like I would make 30 cards per day for like 3 weeks, right? And then like I would go back and immerse in like easy content. And what ended up happening was I would only add in like 2 or 3 cards a day. or like I would barely add in any cards, right, to my Anki. So like I wouldn't be reaching the 10 card threshold. So then like, during those periods where I did because here's the thing, guys, I did a ton of immersion, but during those periods where I did like a ton of immersion, but didn't do a ton of Anki, like I just only did like maybe I only put in like 2 cards or 1 card. Like during those periods, I didn't really like, even though like I was improving somehow, I didn't feel like I was improving that much. Now what I mean, and this is because a lot of the content I was consuming was incomprehensible. So that's what I ended up realizing. Like the thing with anime, guys, is that they use very hard vocabulary, and to be able to understand high level anime, you need to have a very high level of ability. And the problem is, I was consuming content that wasn't comprehensible at all. Like I was reading like light novels that were way above my league, like ReZero, right? When I read that, like I was not understanding nearly like 95%. Like, if you want to learn a lot of vocabulary from immersion, the immersion has to be very comprehensible, right? So that's where Stephen Krashen comes in, right? Like this is where Stephen Krashen's hypothesis does match, is that if you're not using Anki, yes, you need to have a comprehensible input. But sometimes, with me, like I wasn't immersing in comprehensible input, right? Like I was watching super hard anime. I wasn't watching easy anime. Like, there'll be some times where I'll be watching like super hard anime or read like super hard mangas, like Berserk, right? And then all of a sudden, like the comprehension would drop. So then that's when like I would need to use Anki. So Anki is there so that you can basically take more from the immersion that's like incomprehensible. Do you guys understand? So like if you don't want to use Anki, then you have to solely rely on comprehensible input to get better. Because even if you immerse in incomprehensible input, which is basically input that's like way above your league, you're most likely not actually going to improve that much, right? Even though there might be a couple I+1 sentences in that hard immersion, the vast majority of the immersion in like the content is going to be incomprehensible. So you're not actually going to improve that much. Like you would actually improve more by consuming easier level anime or easier level light novels, right? Like instead of reading ReZero, it would be better if you read like Konosuba, okay? Because it'll be more comprehensible, and you grab more vocabulary too, because it's like all the vocabulary is gonna be within context, so you'll be able to effortlessly grow your vocab like that. So that's the one mistake I made, right? Was not consistently using Anki and basically not following the comprehensible input rule. Because now here's the thing, like if you're starting out with Japanese, like you're like in the very beginning stages, obviously, bro, like you're gonna have a period where even for easy content, which is basically like slice of life TV shows or like really easy anime or like really easy stuff, for a while it's gonna be mostly incomprehensible, okay? And that's like, you can't help it, that's kind of shikatanai, right? But once you reach like 95% comprehension in slice of life content, that is when, okay, now you've reached comprehensible input, like now that's when you slowly increase the difficulty over time. So, you stay at the level of comprehension, but you just slowly increase the difficulty. So you go from easy anime to intermediate anime, right? And you stay at the intermediate anime for a while, right? Keep it comprehensible, right? And then once you've mastered intermediate anime, then you finally go into the advanced anime or advanced light novels, right? Like you have to take this gradually, because the problem with me was I was just immersing in anything, right? And I was immersing, from content that ranged from easy, intermediate to advanced, and it was not organized this way. What I would have done is I would have gradually increased the comprehensible input, like as my ability improved, right? And then supplemented that with consistent Anki. Guys, 10 cards a day is gold, okay? If you guys consistently do 10 cards a day, and you didn't do what I did, was like, I still did Anki. Here's the thing, I still was repping. I was still repping my vocab. Like it wasn't like I was inconsistent with Anki specifically. I was just inconsistent at adding 10 cards a day. That's what I was inconsistent at. I was not consistently adding 10 new cards a day. Like I said, there'll be weeks where I'll add in like maybe like for 2 weeks, add in 30 cards because I watched like this. Because I remember like when I was watching Hunter x Hunter or JoJo or like Naruto, I was like so addicted to these shows that like, I would like immerse a lot and I would get like 30 cards. But it's like now, so obviously like, I would have those moments where I'll do a lot of cards, but for the vast majority of the immersion, like during those 2.5 years, like there'll be months where like I would only add like, 2 cards a day, 1 card a day, right? So I wasn't consistently adding 10 cards a day, even though like, so that's why the overall number of like, 4,000 vocab cards on Anki, 4,000 seems a lot, but that's the amount of cards like over the course of like 2.5 years, So that's like, if you really think about it, like it's actually not that much, right? Because if I had consistently done 10 cards, 10 new cards a day over the course of the 2 years, I would have had somewhere like, 7,000 cards in Anki instead of 4,000, right? So that's the thing, guys. So I would recommend you guys consistently just make sure you're getting 10 cards a day, okay? And that's the one thing that you guys don't want to compromise is make sure you get immersion. Like obviously immersion is important, but remember, like get comprehensible immersion, so you're not immersing something that's too difficult. Because trust me, if it's too difficult, you're most likely not acquiring much, right? And this is, I'm talking to advanced people or people that are already intermediate, to where like they already understand easy anime, but like when they watch like the harder light novels or harder anime, they don't understand anything. Like I recommend avoiding that for now and just sticking to things that are comprehensible. Remember, 95% comprehension. Like you basically watch a show and you know most of what's going on. That's like the perfect level of immersion. But and then also combine that with 10 cards a day. So I'll just keep that golden rule. The golden rule for Anki is 10 new cards a day. If you do 10 new cards a day, guys, you guys will get amazing results. All right, like those 10 cards a day makes a difference. So yeah.